time. And so there's going to be a bit of a continuity between what they reported the first time around, which was incomplete, and now showing us that they've completed their goals and moving on with any new goals that they've developed. So that's what's different between the first submission and now a continuing submission as we move through. The beauty, yes?
I need you to talk a little bit more about that, because this is something I've been finding confusing as I've been starting to work on it.
Okay.
Is how much, you're talking about a plan, so presumably that's going forward.
Yes.
So we're not talking about plans for the last 3 years, like, I'm confused about the timeline.
The timeline, okay. So when you reported the first time in 07, 08, you only had about 9 months to work on your continuing education initiatives. This time, you've had pretty much the 3 years. So, I mean, keeping in mind that your plan should be as dynamic as possible, we want to see where you're at for your self-assessment after all this time. So what have you been working on in your self-assessment for the past 3 years? And that should include the continuity of what you had started in 07, 08. So for example, if I submitted standard indicator 2.1 and 3.2 in 07, 08, and I had marked them at substantial progress. Well, this time around, I can tell the college that I finished working on them, so they're still in my self-assessment. But because they're finished and I started working on other things since then, I'm also going to report on the things that I've begun since then. So essentially, you're going to have some of your learning goals that might be completed. They might have been completed in 08, who knows? But then you'll have new learning goals that will have come up since then. And so we need to see a summary of everything that was done during the 3 years. And so you can't really think about it from 1 year to the next. It's more overall, what have I been up to?
And so that means really that you'll be reporting not just on 3 goals?
Everybody is different. The required minimum is 3 different standard indicators which lead to 3 different learning goals. But people have anywhere between 3 and 12 learning goals. And the software can accommodate that. Yes, Francis?
When I was traveling in the summertime, when I put down what I plan to do in the self-assessment section, then I said, I wrote all kinds of things about it, and then I said, no, I'm not going to work on this because I've done it. Well, then it erased everything.
Okay, so you didn't save your work. Is that what you're saying? Because once you've...
So you just put down that you didn't need to work on it. Did it not erase everything else that...
Did you delete it?
No.
Okay.
I think if you remove it from
If you-
intent to address this,
Yeah.
then it takes it out of the plan.
Yeah. So if you look at the self-assessment right now, this is my own self-assessment, so just ignore what's written there. I've played with this a lot. So yes, if you click yes, then it will populate that standard indicator into your professional development plan. If you click no, it will remove it.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
because I finished it, I thought, no anymore. I've done it, but I'm not going to work on it anymore. So
Yes.
I said no.
But
well,
you-
the whole thing wiped out all of what I've done, writing everything down.
Okay. What should happen, so when you're working through your self-assessment, it's really important to save your work. So at the bottom of the screen, there's a save function. Once you've gone through one standard, just click save. That's really important. You have to save your work. There's no automatic saving function in the software. Some people can go through their whole self-assessment if they want to and click save at the very end, or you can click save after each standard, which is safer. I would recommend that you do that. So Francis, I think what happened was you filled out your self-assessment, then you see it when you're working inside of it. So I'll see all the standard indicators that you decided to work on for the past 3 years, and then it'll show me the details. So what was the learning goal, which activities were selected, and then which ones were completed, which ones are at preliminary, which ones are at substantial. So it's important for you to show me that. And also, if your job has changed or the nature of your job has changed and you've had to make major changes over the past 3 years, you can show me that you've suspended learning goals and then have created new ones. The only tricky thing about suspending a goal is that you have to write the reason why. So you could just say, you know, nature of my responsibilities changed, or this was not applicable to my practice anymore. As long as I see that, it's fine. Does that make sense?
But I'm not so sure that's clear in instructions.
Test, can you hear some corona?
Okay. In the instructions, if for example you haven't been working on your CCP for a long time,
Oh, wait.
is there a question from a remote site? No,
It's just trying to
a
come on.
testing? Okay.
We're just testing to see if we can hear us in corona.
We can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We're just having some major issues with pellets right now. I think some other sites are probably having some issues too. So we're just finally getting a hold of you. We can hear you most of the time.
I can
We just
hear
wanted to see
you.
if you can hear us because we did have some questions.
Okay. I can hear you very clearly.
That's great.
I'll take your questions at the end. Is that okay?
Sounds good. Thanks, Melanie.
Okay, I'll go side by side at the end. Okay, so for explanations, I think that there's a lot of variation in what people remember or don't remember with regards to the self-assessment and the professional development plan. So what the Skillshare team did for us was that they took our guidelines and have incorporated them in the different sections. So as you're going through your self-assessment and your professional development plan, if you have doubts or you're not sure about the requirements for each section, please don't hesitate to use the helpful links in the left-hand menu. We have kept the self-assessment guidelines, which are very detailed, as well as the professional development guidelines in the professional development plan section. So please refer to those. And I highly recommend referring to the assessment criteria as well to kind of do a quick self-evaluation and see if your learning plans are missing anything. But what's really important to remember for you is to start with the self-assessment, because this software is intelligent, so it will take the information you input into the self-assessment and bring it into your professional development plan, which in the past you would have had to transfer yourself from one component to the other. So is everyone okay with the self-assessment? Are there questions? Yes.
Can you access your last submission?
No, unfortunately, we didn't have the monies to archive the previous submission, but I do have an electronic archive of your submission. If you lost it, you can ask me for that. However, this one will be archived. So next time you create a new plan, you will have access to this one.
But you could email us our last one.
Absolutely, yeah. Please just email me and I can do that for you. Yeah.
How are you going to show continuity if you did complete something so you mark no in the self-assessment?
It's up
You're
to
going to
you.
miss that information.
I will, yeah. But if I
Will that be adequate? Like, for example, I mean, I've been working on this, so I have a lot of things going on in my head.
good.
And the things that I was working on 3 years ago, mostly I'm not working on those things anymore. And so when I self-assess now, most of what I have as goals are things that I'm working on now
Okay.
going into the future.
Well, I understand what you mean. However, that's not how the program is constructed. It's
Okay?
a summary of your self-assessment over the 3 years, right?
Yeah, but so how do I say now in my self-assessment,
You'll
here
s-
I am?
You'll say that after October 31st. So in your new plan, if it's for future work,
So should this, I'm back to my timeline
okay.
question. So when I'm marking the self-assessment, am I marking how I was 3 years ago? Like at what point am I marking my self-assessment?
You're marking what you worked on for the last 3 years. So you're telling me, okay, when I was doing my self-assessment, these are the things that came up, and this is what I worked on. And some of them might be current to now. you might still be working on them, or they might be new. That's okay. You can indicate that. But I still need to see the things that were completed. Yeah, because otherwise I won't have continuity. It'll be really difficult for me to say, oh yeah, she finished those learning goals, and then moving forward. Yeah. So this software allows you to do both. It allows you to show completion, and it allows you to show anything new. Yeah. So it's like a snapshot, you know. It's yeah. Go ahead, Robin.
So I'm confused now too. I think so when you say no, you don't want to say no on that initial part.
Well,
because otherwise it
if you
doesn't
say no,
transfer.
it means you haven't addressed that standard indicator.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Melanie, I know I've spoken to you over the phone a few times, but I know that 3 years ago, my understanding of this whole CCP process was not as clear as it is now.
Yes.
And my understanding of like measurable, maybe that's not the word I want to use, but things that you're working towards, which have a beginning and an end, my understanding of that was not the case 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be reading, you know, articles as I found them,
Yes.
and
And
when did the articles start and when did they stop?
Yes.
I had no sense of that. I didn't
Yes.
realize I wasn't even doing it properly.
And I think,
So-
you know, that was very much a challenge for us and the Quality Assurance Committee to find a way to make learning goals finite. I think that's important for all of us, and sometimes, you know, the nature of a dietitian's work is that some learning goals are not finite, and you might just be, you know, a lifelong learner for certain topics. However, for the college, you have to break it down and make it, you know, completable, if you'll excuse my expression, but that's what we, you know, so the only way that we can see that you've finished something, or that, you know, you've acquired new knowledge or new skills for a specific area of practice. So, but I agree with you, that's definitely a challenging thing. You know, if I think of enteral nutrition, for example, like how can you ever know everything there is to know about enteral nutrition? You can't. But if you think about, you know, nasal jejunal tube placement, well then yes, you know, maybe you can say, oh, I've learned about this, I feel comfortable doing it, and I'm carrying on with another topic. So I think, you know, it requires a bit of reflection on our part to focus on our learning goals and make them achievable. Any other questions before I move on to the professional development plan? Yes?
Just wondering if those of us due at the end of the month, does that mean in November we're starting to make a new one?
I still have to iron that out with the developers. It might be in March after registration renewal. So as of April 1st, as you renew your registration, you will have access to a new plan for the 2014 reporting year. So I haven't defined it yet with them. I have to see, you know, technologically what's feasible for them too, because we have to go into a process where if someone's plan isn't complete, we have to reopen it for them to correct the plan or make revisions or whatever before the registration renewal deadline. So that's why we kept the October to March gap there to allow for that. Yes.
If I'm not due for 2 years, am I allowed to go in here and do things?
Yeah. You can start working.
So you can do annually, you can do something or whatever.
Well, you can. That's what we recommend, that people go in and update their self-assessment and their plan annually. And you'll be able to work in the same self-assessment and plan until your deadline for submission.
Yes. A couple of questions just before confused me that I had thought when I kind of summarize my last 3 years and submit that, I was simultaneously also putting in my new goals and learning objectives. And I thought that was all happening. That I wasn't going to be doing it again in March. Am I correct?
No,
in that?
you're not doing it again in March.
Okay.
No.
So I'm doing it
March
all.
31st is the deadline to meet the CCP requirement for registration.